I'll let John start and introduce yourself, and then we'll kick this off.
Okay, appreciate it. Thanks, Hatem. Thank you for having me. So yeah, as you said, I work at a company called The Agency in Beverly Hills. We're generally regarded as the top luxury brokerage in Los Angeles. I've been in real estate now for about 17 years. I actually started as a mortgage broker, Ryan, funny enough. Did that for about 8 years, including during the mortgage meltdown, which was particularly fun. Yep. I then got into doing real estate development. I built and developed a couple of high-end spec homes, and then I started selling full-time in, it was, 2011. So I've been doing that for about 9 years now. I run a team of 10 people, and as you said, we had kind of a banner year last year, closed just under $250 million, and that's me.
Ryan?
Awesome. Yeah, John, you and I have very similar background. I didn't get into real estate, but I've been doing this for 15 years now. I run the Ryan Grant team here at Fairway Mortgage. We're fortunate to be, one of the top 25 lenders in the country. About 82 people on the team. We did just under $700 million in loan volume in 2019. And we run a platform called The Art of Homeownership, which is really changing the way the consumers see real estate and mortgage professionals, with our commitment being vastly different than most. And it's based solely around education, advice, and guidance to help people grow their generational wealth and be smarter about their real estate investments, saving money. And so that's why we partner with Hatem and his team to help our clients on the finance side, and excited to be here today.
Awesome. So I brought you both here because I think you both have a really, really insightful view on what's going on. So obviously we're all confined, we're all at home. Everyone is wondering what's happening with the real estate market, what's going on with prices. I wanted to start maybe by giving it to you, John, and maybe talk a little bit about an overview of the market. Like, are transactions happening right now? What's going on? Maybe start there.
Sure. Believe it or not, there's actually a fair amount of activity in the market right now, which I know comes as a surprise to a lot of people. Frankly, it came as a bit of a surprise to myself. Obviously, 6-8 weeks ago when this first all unfolded, I don't think people really knew what to do with it. So a lot of people just naturally kind of pumped the brakes. But in just the last 2 or 3 weeks alone, we've seen a significant increase in activity. I think part of that is due to the fact that Mayor Garcetti finally lifted the restriction on us being able to show property. Yeah. For the first, again, 6-8 weeks of this, we were not deemed an essential service provider. So legally, technically, we weren't really allowed to be showing property, and frankly, no one really felt comfortable doing it anyways. But in the last couple of weeks, that has changed. We're now allowed to show property, and God, I mean, I put 3 deals in escrow last week, a little over probably $12.5 million in escrow last week. I'm listing 4 properties this week, and it seems almost day by day we're seeing a gradual increase in that activity, which I think suggests sort of a renewed sense of confidence in people kind of getting back out into the market. It's far from business as usual. I mean, if I'm being honest, it's a bit awkward. You go to these appointments and you're wearing gloves and masks, and it feels like you're walking into like a contaminated, I
was going to ask you, how is it? You just have to protect yourself. Like how?
So part of that is obviously just for everyone's protection, right? And those are the rules and restrictions we have to abide by in showing properties today. Is there certain disclosure forms that have to be signed? Everyone's required to wear gloves and masks. And again, that's for everyone's just mutual benefit and protection, which of course is smart. So the experience is a bit unusual. We're doing far more virtual tours than ever before. For every new listing, we're doing what's called a 3D Matterport tour, which gives you that ability to walk through a house and take a virtual tour of it. Yeah. I find that a lot of home tours are starting there, and then if there's genuine interest, then it moves on to an in-person showing. But yeah,
how many showings on average would people take before putting an offer in, or are people putting an offer without seeing places?
It's rare to find sight unseen offers. They do exist. I have one out right now, but I'm again the first person to admit that is by far the exception more than it is the rule. Sure. It's a wealthy international client that has that sort of ability. Mm-hmm. Most people, to spend the kind of money you have to spend to buy something in Los Angeles, at a certain point, you want to touch it and feel it and actually, experience it in person. Is
this our new normal? Like, is this how we're going to see houses going forward? What do you think?
So I've actually taken issue with that phrase that people have been throwing around, because I don't feel like this is the new norm. I feel like this is a temporary state of uncertainty that we're still trying to figure out.
Sure.
That said, now that the shelter in place order in Los Angeles has been extended for another 3 months, I think that there is a certain amount of kind of new norm in that, we all know that this isn't just going to end on a Tuesday and we go back to life as normal on Wednesday, right? This is going to be sort of a slow, gradual process. And I think it's going to sort of be in phase 1.0, 2.0. It could be up to phase 40.0, who knows? But I think that gradual integration back into society is going to look like this. Most tours will start virtually. And then, with those in-person showings, people will observe social distancing and practice all sort of necessary precautions. But again, there is definitely a very noticeable, significant uptick in activity. It is more so in the lower end market than in the upper end market. And by lower end, which of course is a relative term, I would say anywhere up to like 1.5 to 2 million. I'm seeing several properties that are getting multiple offers. I just listed something the other day I already have multiple offers on.
Any areas in general that in LA at least that are seeing more activity, or just
across the board?
Honestly,
board. Yeah, it's just, it's supply and demand, which I know we'll talk about a little bit more later, but there's still a fairly limited amount of supply and a very strong amount of demand in that first time home buyer price arena, which I would consider, again, up to like 1.5 to 2 million. And it's funny, everybody's out there looking for the same thing, which is a deal, right? Everybody wants to find a deal, but if anything is priced in a way that even resembles a deal, if it even sort of smells of a deal, it's getting 6 or 7, 8 offers that's bidding it up to a price where it's no longer a deal.
So let's hone in on that. Like, what do you mean a deal? Like, is it 10, 20% cheaper than it was 3 months ago? Is that considered a deal?
So everyone's hoping for that and looking for that, and certainly getting those phone calls where it's like, hey, that property wants 2 million. Let's offer them 1.2. It's like, what? No, that's not. We're certainly not there yet. We may get there. I hope not, but we're not there today. The deals that went into escrow prior to this all unfolding, many of them tried to retrade on price, and many did so effectively. And that retrade came in anywhere between 5 and 10% of wherever they entered into escrow. That was sort of deemed the COVID discount. I don't know how everyone arrived at that same figure, but it was about 10%. Okay. The stuff that's coming to market now, I'm not seeing any sort of COVID discount baked into the price. In fact, I'm seeing it listed essentially the same as it would have been 8 to 10 weeks ago. Wow. Probably for a couple reasons. One, sellers don't want to negotiate against themselves, so they're not going to willingly reduce the price. They're just kind of bringing it to market at that number with the understanding that buyers are going to be more apt to negotiating today than they were a couple months ago. So thus far, I mean, look, real estate is generally a lagging indicator, and I don't know, we haven't seen the full effect of this, but there hasn't been an immediate or direct impact as it relates to an adjustment in values here yet.
I want to ask you about that later, because in the public markets where we invest, you've seen real estate adjust, right? And we haven't seen it in the residential market, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. I want to go to Ryan and talk a little bit about rates. The Fed chair, Powell, was on TV this morning, had a speech that the market did not really like, frankly.
Yeah, it wasn't a fan.
That was not fun. But rates are obviously all-time low. Maybe give us a little overview of what to expect. We advise our clients on buying, when to buy, and so forth. And we're in opinion that rates are going to be low for a long time. But can you put that in a real estate kind of term?
Yeah. So, a lot of us have heard the term "don't fight the Fed," right? And this holds very true here, where, some people may not be aware, but when interest rates were trending down early March, when this kind of COVID thing was accelerating, it kind of broke the mortgage industry, right? To the point to where rates went from the low 3s to almost 5%, because there was no buyers of mortgage-backed securities, right? So nobody would come in and buy that asset class. So the Fed stepped in and said, all right, we need to prop this up and support it to keep rates low. Yep. So they went in heavy, and they went in so heavy that they created margin calls for all the lenders, and it created a lot of chaos. But it was a good intent, right? And now they've managed it to a certain level where they're buying a certain number of mortgage-backed securities per day. They're buying treasury bonds, and they're keeping rates relatively low, kind of like they were doing with quantitative easing. Right. And That's expected to continue, right? I mean, when you look at the last recession, 2008, they didn't adjust the Fed funds rate until 2015, right, or 16, right? So it really lasted almost 8 years.
Sure.
We don't think it'll be that long, but maybe 2023, 2024. But combination of the Fed going to artificially keep rates down to that point to keep things fulfilled, but the 10-year Treasury being down there as well. Interest rates should actually be quite a bit lower than they are today, right? And the only reason they are not is because of the forbearance challenges, right? People are, every time a lender funds a new mortgage, they actually risk losing more money than they make if that client goes into forbearance, right? And
Yes,
so
so let's talk about that, right? So you got a bunch of people who can afford to pay their mortgages, or at least lost their jobs for temporarily at least, and they're going these forbearances. Are lenders able to manage this? I know the big banks, Bank of America, Wells, and so forth, are easy to deal with. But if you have your mortgage with someone else, is that an issue? Are lenders going to suffer?
Well, yeah, I mean, first of all, the only people who are mandated to offer forbearances are lenders with Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac mortgages, right? So if it's a FHA loan, if it's a non-conforming or jumbo loan or non-qualified mortgage, the lender does not have to issue a forbearance there. Now they are, and they're working through those with people, but they're not required to through the CARES Act.
Yeah.
The ones that have those mortgages, which is 95% of America has a mortgage of 760 or below, they're having to issue these forbearances. And then if they're servicing it, the challenge is that if you're the customer and I'm the mortgage company and John is the owner of the mortgage, right? If you don't pay me as a servicer, I'm still required to pay John the note, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the challenge is servicers are really going to be strapped, and they're working through that. They're asking for a bailout from the Fed, or at least a window to the Fed where they can borrow that money. But it's a challenge right now that a lot of people are facing, and it's really a product of the fact that nobody ever thought that the government could dictate, hey, we expect you to continue to pay your creditors or your debtors, but not earn your revenue. So it's really new for everybody.
Law of unintended consequences, right?
Yeah.
So you work for an independent issuer, right?
Mortgage bank, correct? Yep.
Yeah, right. A lot of the jumbo loans are done through usually the bigger banks, right?
Yep.
Are they the winners here? Because I know they basically don't make money on those bigger loans because they want assets. Is that true?
I don't know if I'd call any mortgage company a winner currently. I think long term, the mortgage space will get back to normal. But the challenge with the larger banks is that they have such a tight credit box already,
Right.
and it's tightened up even more, right? So the liberalness they had previously has kind of all but gone away, and independent mortgage banks, we have really been our jumbo products have really been tightened almost to the point of non-existence. When it comes to profitability, these larger banks, they don't tend to look for their mortgage division as a profit center. They look for it as a ability to bring in checking accounts, savings accounts, investment accounts. So you probably well know if someone's trying to get a mortgage at B of A or Wells or Chase, they're going to say, if you bring over X number of dollars, we're going to give you a lower interest rate. And so
that all day long, we see it.
Yeah, and they run their mortgage operations at a break even or a loss. So they're kind of loss leaders to bring in the additional money. That's why they gravitate more towards the wealthier clients, which unfortunately disproportionately affects their ability to help the average middle to lower class person. And so that's where independent mortgage banks really step in, is that we primarily offer financing to 99% of the community, and then the 1%, we still play in that game in a normal world. It's just we can't offer those deposit discounts because we're not depository banks.
So are you seeing basically the requirements improve? Like you've seen more, not just change, nothing changed?
The guidelines have actually gotten much more strict, right? So there used to be literally 6 weeks ago, you could be self-employed, and we know a lot of our self-employed clients, have tax strategies that end up to where they don't show a substantial amount of income. So you could use bank statements to help those people qualify for mortgages. Those have all but gone by the wayside. You could use debt service ratios on investment properties where you didn't even have to show income. Those have gone by the wayside. You could do, 5 or 10% down jumbo financing. The majority of that's gone by the wayside. There's still ways to do it. There's still some creative ways to do it, but and the biggest thing is proving income, right? Because especially for self-employed people, right? You literally could show your 2019 tax return, but who cares, right? Like if you could be making zero money now. And so self-employed is probably the hardest hit right now because it's hard to quantify their current ability to repay that mortgage. But even down to your average hourly worker, people are making, no overtime, but less overtime, commissions are reduced. Everybody, in a large part has been impacted in many ways, not every industry, but that's really the biggest challenge right now is proving your ability to be able to repay that mortgage. And that's where it's gotten very strict.
So if you actually have income and you haven't really lost your job, this may be actually an awesome time to be getting a mortgage.
Yeah, I mean, with what we're seeing from a lot of the, the research firms, the Moody's, FHFA, some of the B of A global research studies, is that, we're expecting about a 2.3% retraction nationwide in home values for about a 6-month stretch from maybe now to the beginning of 2021. But then a bounce back of up 7%, right? Which was previously was forecasted about 4 to 5% growth over the next 5 years. It's just, as John said, the demand coming into this thing was outrageous. And that demographic didn't change, right? It just got sidelined, right? So there's still the same demand there. And for the people who have the ability to take advantage of even a flexible seller, right? Like I wouldn't even call it a buyer's market. It's just, it's a seller who may be able to offer 2, 3, 4% credit. Buyers can use that credit to substantially buy down their interest rate, buy out mortgage insurance, and improve their terms. And they've effectively, already gotten rid of any potential retraction in the market, and they're just going to see nothing but upside with the best interest rate since the history of mankind.
Right. John, maybe you can comment on this. So you said 2.3, like we have a lot of clients who have been saving, who are trying to buy a house for a long time. Obviously, LA market is not cheap. Is this going to be the opportunity? Is this the time to really make it happen?
I'm not sure that any of us know the answer to that question yet, right? I think we're still waiting for the dust to settle and see what that all looks like when it does. Right now, certainly not. Again, I think it's too soon. I would sort of almost equate this to, I think, some of the advice that I've heard you give to your clients about, like, is now a great time to be buying back into the stock market and picking up these steals? It's like, well, maybe not yet, right? We're looking out for those opportunities, but not yet. This is still relatively new. We're only, a couple months into this. As I mentioned earlier, the people that are out looking right now, some of them I think have, I'll just say, unrealistic expectations in terms of the type of deal they're hoping to find. Sure. And again, if something even, if it's even priced 5%, what's sort of deemed market value, it's often receiving half a dozen offers that simply bids it back up to what was market value. So, LA is an interesting market in that we have price points ranging from, $500,000 to $100 million. And we sell everything in between. So it's hard to give sort of a broad answer to that question because it's such a different answer in each sort of subset of the market. I think that the lower end arena, again, meaning up to like 1.5 to 2 million, is going to continue to experience a ton of activity, a consistent level of demand. And in that respect, I don't know that you're going to see very many deals. I really don't.
We tell our clients all the time, listen, you can't time these things. Nobody knows what's going to happen in the next 3 to 6 months. If it makes sense for you, go for it, right? That's what we say. But we're getting people saying, well, if you wait 3 months or 6 months, I'm going to get a screaming deal. I don't think that's...
I'll give you an example. In the higher end arena, there was a property, a pocket listing, which for those of you who don't know means a property that's not officially on the market. It's not on the MLS, but it's made available for sale. In the Beverly Hills Flats, which is obviously a highly sought after area. It was one of those older homes that hadn't been touched in several decades and needed new everything. And it was priced at $6.5 million, which is probably a fair price. It's by no means a fire sale price. They received 18 offers. This is 4 weeks ago. 18 offers, right? Which just goes to show, what a testament to the fact that there are that many buyers still willing to step up and pay, in most instances, cash for a property in a highly desirable area. I do think that the ultra luxury arena is going to take a hit during all of this. And I think that's going to probably be over the next 12 to 18 months. I think that sector of the market was poised to take a hit anyways, because there's just an oversupply in that sort of 20, 25 million and up. The market's been in a furious updraft since 2012. And I think that there is actually more product on the market than there is demand for it. There's only so many 25 and $50 million home buyers each year.
I want to talk about the luxury in a minute, but I heard you say this before and I thought it was really insightful. Can you talk about the concept of supply and demand in real estate? Because I don't think people really understand that well. So maybe talk about.
Yeah. So look, real estate is at the mercy of supply and demand economics like any other industry. I think that as we sort of go through this, and this is just one theory, but it's just my sort of deductive reasoning here, that as we go through this, we're probably going to see unemployment at the highest point we've seen, which in theory should suggest that there are less buyers in the market. Less buyers in the market means less demand in the market. On the other side of the coin, I think that in all likelihood, we're going to see a surplus of inventory at some point. A lot of listings have been held back over the last 8 to 10 weeks, whether it's people that were planning to list their home, but just were happy to have somewhere they could shelter in place, so they didn't want to list it, or they didn't think it was an opportune time and they didn't want to fall on deaf ears. Developers fall into that category that have been finishing projects over the last couple months, but didn't want to bring it to market until they had a more captive audience. So at some point here, I think there's going to be a surplus of inventory. And when you have a surplus of inventory and less demand, right, that sort of imbalance in theory should or could potentially create an adjustment in housing values. I think what's throwing everyone off right now is that despite the fact that there is less demand and there is greater uncertainty, there are still enough buyers in the market that are looking for quality inventory in a market like Los Angeles, where, a vast majority of the people I don't want to say people aren't affected by this. Everyone's being affected by it, but there's still enough money in the market. You mentioned at the onset, I'm born and raised in LA. I've been here my whole life, and it never ceases to amaze me the astronomical amount of money that exists in this town. So again, the stuff that in the higher end arena where I also play in, the product that is truly extraordinary is going to continue to sell, but it's going to take that. Great isn't going to cut it. Good isn't going to cut it. That, it gets sort of lost in the shuffle of that sort of mediocrity. But the stuff that's really extraordinary, there's still going to be a market for, I think.
And I think that's
Go ahead, Ryan.
I was going to say that's the confusion that a lot of people are making is they're grabbing headlines and applying them equitably across the board. And real estate is the most unequitable market possible. Like this is not a stock or a bond, right? There's no index for real estate, right? Because everything's so different. So when you look at stuff like 2.3% estimated price decline, that's going to be in the markets that are most significantly impacted, which I think over 53% of the job losses, at least through beginning of April, were service sector, right? Is going to be your bartenders, waiters, waitresses, hospitality, that type of stuff. And so they're not buying the higher end homes, right? They're going to be more impacted in the Las Vegas markets and other places. So every market's going to be a little bit different. And when you think about asking your clients, is it a good time? Best thing to do is see how this has impacted them, right? Like we always talk about current estimated income and future estimated income, right? What can you be confident in, and then what are your outs, right? What if this goes deeper, right? What if the resurgent is worse than the initial one? How can you protect yourself in the event that you do invest in real estate? And what are your, what opportunities do you have to work through a future challenge that may not be easily to understand or see right now?
So 2 points to that, right? Within LA has entertainment. We have a lot of travel, a lot of foreign money coming in, and that's been hit, arguably one of the hardest industries hit, right? So we see it in our clients, see the uncertainty there. But as John said, we don't see that in the real estate market just yet. Is that something maybe to come, or Apple and Amazon and all the other streamers are spending enough money in LA where it's never going to happen?
I think, as I've said before, it is going to be in direct correlation and proportion to however long this lasts, which is still, an unknown variable. You and I were talking a bit before this started that, the webinar I did last week with some of my own clients that work in the music industry, particularly within touring, they're saying that they're not booking their next gigs right now until like May or June of 2021. Now, the guys that are at the top of the pyramid, yeah, they can weather the storm. They've made enough money. They've stashed it. But, the rest of the people, I think, are going to really struggle. And I think that kind of applies across the board. You could say that about talent agents, right? You could say that about tour managers. You could say that about so many different people that work in that industry. So again, I think that we're still really at the beginning stages of this. And if that turns out to be true and we don't have live events, we're not able to, production isn't able to resume until 2021. Yeah, I think that you could see a major impact there.
Got it. Yeah, interesting times, man. I want to talk a little bit about the high end. Obviously, we're a wealth management firm. We have a lot of rich clients and not so rich clients, but we have both. And last year, you sold, I think, one of the highest priced homes in LA, I believe it's $75 million was the listing price, right?
75 million was the price we closed at.
That's amazing. Okay. What's that market like? First of all, who the heck buys a $75 million home? And what is that like?
What's that market like? Bizarre is what that market's like.
Bizarre.
I mean, yeah, you really deal with clients that just absolutely march to the beat of their own drum. It's not that they don't understand the rules of the game. It's that they just don't give a shit.
Yeah.
They just don't care. They just, they really are used to just kind of everyone catering to them. And, in situations like that, you really just kind of have to take the playbook and almost just kind of toss it out the window. You have to just kind of be fluid and adaptive and be able to just kind of be creative in the way that deal is structured. Yeah, I think that's really sort of the key to working in that part of the market.
So in that market, let's say 2 to 10. I know there's a mega mansions coming all over the city, from the west side to Orange County to Venice and so forth. What can we expect? I mean, obviously there is a glut. There's not a lot of people that can afford $10 million homes. So what to expect there?
Well, I mean, let's just look at what we know right now. So in the last 4 weeks, there have been 4 sales north of 10 million. 9 sales north of 5 million, between 5 and 10 million, excuse me. And now in just the last couple weeks, in terms of what's closed and pending, what's currently not closed and pending, in terms of what's in escrow, there are now 11 deals north of $10 million in escrow and 19 deals in escrow right now between 5 and 10 million. So again, speaking to what I mentioned earlier, I mean, a significant uptick in activity, even in that 5 to 10 and $10 million plus. So, right now, I mentioned earlier, I'm listing 4 properties this week. They're all in sort of the lower price arena between like 1.5 to 4 million. I have some listings in the 7 to $10 million range. I'm purposely holding them back right now. I'm still just kind of touching base with my clients each week, waiting to see how the market is adjusting and unfolding to this to make sure that we're rolling it out at the right time. I think that most people in that arena have the ability to be more patient. Yeah. I always say you can define a seller by their level of motivation, right? So if you have a seller who needs to sell due to some type of life circumstance, something perhaps relating to COVID, then obviously that becomes a very different conversation than someone who was just thinking about selling because they either wanted to upgrade or something else. Yeah. So again, I think that part of the market will kind of gradually ease back in more so than the lower sector, which has experienced tremendous activity right now.
Ryan, can you talk a little bit about the lending market on that space? Like, I mean, it seems it's just a lot tougher for people to get loans, 1.5 to 2 million plus these days. Can you give some comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is, and it's not impossible at all. I mean, if someone has verifiable income and a stable job, and a lot of times underwriters are a bit challenged right now in figuring out, okay, first of all, are they an essential worker? Right. And then, are they self-employed? And, as we know, a lot of people in that higher end space are oftentimes self-employed or are good at managing their money to the point to where they don't show a lot of it. And so that's just going to be the catch, right? Is that you're going to see a lot more cash come into that space. And the other drawback to that is people don't want to pull cash from an asset class that's been, impacted over the last 6 weeks. And realize that loss, right? Or take a short-term problem and make it a long-term nightmare. So you have to balance, like, where are people going to pull the cash necessary to qualify for the mortgage that their income shows that they can get? Whereas previously it was a little bit looser, right? There was, private money lending, there was non-qualified mortgage lending. That space had really bloomed over the last 3 or 4 years, which was really necessary for that asset class. Was
Is that private investors that are coming in and doing that lending, or?
Not always. So I mean, there's institutional investors in that non-qualified mortgage space. You can give $4, $5, $6 million loans that are, that make sense, right? Like the person has enough money down, right? 30% down, 25, 40% down. So the risk is mitigated by the equity position. They show enough in reserves. They show enough in, verifiable income in whatever capacity the lender wants to see that income verified. So it's more of a play where you just say it's a risk assessment, right? Like, yeah, this makes sense. Now, it's not the best terms in the world, right? You're going to get that by being really A paper or highly qualified in a conventional setting. But that disappeared almost within like a week of COVID hitting. We just saw it just instantly dry up. I mean, our company alone had probably, close to $100 million in that kind of ready to sell funded loan position. And we're still working through that just to get a lot of that stuff sold off. Now we've been fortunate to kind of skirt by it, but a lot of companies didn't. A lot of companies got stuck with that stuff on their books and they couldn't sell it.
Yeah, Cash, you're king right now. Let me ask this. There's a lot of talks about how Airbnb obviously is in trouble right now, and there is a lot of properties in LA. Maybe John can his comments on this. A lot of properties in LA and across the world, by the way, that are used for Airbnbs, and whereby the owners now know they can't really rent them. Are those coming on the market? Is that something that brokers are talking about?
Yeah, I mean, this became a pretty hot topic last year when LA introduced the new laws relating to Airbnb here in Los Angeles, which for those of you that aren't familiar, if you want to list your property on Airbnb, you first have to register with the city. And I think it's like an $89 registration fee. And that allows you to register the property for up to 120 nights of the year. So about a third of the year. And you can only do that on a primary residence. You cannot do that on a secondary residence or an investment property. Now, if you have a secondary residence or investment property, you can still lease that out on Airbnb, but it has to be for longer periods of time, which they deem to be 30 days or greater. So we got a lot of phone calls from clients that had investment properties they were using for Airbnb that said, I got to get rid of this, right? I've been making a fortune on it through Airbnb, but I can no longer do that, and I want to offload it. So in that respect, we already saw sort of a shift in the Airbnb market starting last year, but I think you bring up a valid point. No one can travel right now. So the people that even were planning to claim those 120 nights out of the 365-day year are finding themselves with a lot of, vacant doors. So yeah, I think there are multiple impacts of what's happening and what will continue to happen over the coming months that are going to force many people into a situation where they're going to need to sell. And that's not something that we celebrate. Obviously, it's a big decision to decide to sell your home, and we don't want it to ever be forced on people. But the unfortunate reality is I think that we're going to see a lot of that coming up.
Right. Yeah, good point. I have about 5 to 7 minutes more, and then we can open it for some questions. I wanted to talk about this new trend from working from home, right? I think everyone will agree, everyone is used now to using Zoom and doing these, webinars and being able really to work remotely. Does that give like second tier cities like Denver and, other smaller cities that are not close to LA or New York a second leg where people can actually move there and afford the place? And is that a trend to watch?
It's an interesting question. I mean, we're seeing an increase in activity right now in areas that you would expect. Malibu, the Hamptons, Santa Barbara, Montecito, right? Those kind of destination areas that are still close enough to major cities that you can get back to them relatively quickly and easily if you need to, but far enough removed that you don't feel like you're kind of in the middle of that concrete jungle. Right. I don't know that it so much applies to like, hey, I have a business in LA and I'm going to, operate out of Park City, right? I'm not sure that that is so much applicable. I think that people are making do with working from home, and I think it's forcing a lot of people out of those vertical cities like New York and San Francisco. I'm certainly getting a lot of calls from clients in New York that are saying, look, if I have to shelter in place, I don't want to be in this apartment. I want a backyard and a pool. And so I think that I don't know how long-term the effects of that are going to be. I think people are just kind of in a reactionary mode right now. Yeah. Like I said at the beginning, it really depends on how long this lasts, right? If this goes on into next year, then people really might adjust their mindset and do, I don't want to live in these sort of stacked, concrete jungle, this type of living. If this, we come out of it sooner, people might have a short memory and kind of go back to the way they were.
I think, yes, I totally agree. Obviously, if you have a vaccine too, I think people will revert back to what they've done forever. So
yeah, I mean, New Yorkers are going to be New Yorkers, right? They're going to.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I would argue that the reason New York is because of its density. Because if it's right there, you can do so many things super close by, and that energy, right? And I hope we don't lose that. I really do. So.
Me too. I just think, again, for the people that have the means and the ability, they're going to at least seek to have some type of opportunity outside the city, maybe for, a situation, heaven forbid, like this in the future. Yeah, it also comes down to, again, it really just comes down to what people's sort of means and abilities are. A lot of people don't have those options.
Right.
And we've been seeing it for the last couple of years. We've been seeing kind of a flight to affordability, right? Which is, if I can't, I'd love to stay here, but if I can't afford it, then I need to move. And, we're seeing a lot of it down here where we're making it easier to commute out to the Inland Empire, widening ways, try and make, mass transportation a little bit easier. But we're the preferred lender for Facebook and all of their employees. And they're not coming back to work for quite some time, right? And they're quite able to work from home, right? The same way that our employees are. So they're actually going to be able to get outside of the city or that, that San Mateo area that they're housed in. And so they're moving out to more of the rural-ish areas, if you call it that, because it's affordable. They can still work, they can work remotely. So I think the combination of finding affordability plus companies realizing they can save money on commercial space and allowing people to work efficiently from home is going to create a lot of kind of a move to that affordable or more open area. So yeah, I think we'll see that pick up even more so than it has been.
I think we'll have another conversation about the commercial impacts, right? Because I think that's another story there. But we work with a lot of tech clients, and we're seeing that too. Like Twitter announcing yesterday you can work from home forever. That's going to set the standard for a lot of tech companies where they're going to have to give those options to their employees. And what's going to happen is, like you said, like why would I live in San Francisco when I can live in Santa Cruz or someone cheaper if Santa Cruz is cheaper. I think with that, maybe I just want to finish up with talking a little bit about the transaction itself and between you two. In my firm, we try to be paperless. Everything's digital, DocuSign. You don't even have to see anybody. You can do everything remotely. Is that I'm refinancing my house right now. It's just a pain. Is that moving into a digital transaction? Like, is this really the time where that's going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, it should be fully digital now for the majority of the institutions. I can't remember the last time we signed anything, kind of wet signed. Obviously the closing, there's typically 5 or 6 documents that need a wet signature for recording. There's a lot of legislation that's aiming to change that, but the challenge is not every county is created the same in terms of their digital footprint. So if the county can't, if they still have paper files in the back, they have to go drum up to get information, then that may be a challenge for them. But e-notarization is a big push. A lot of states have adopted e-notarization to where a notary can, meet you in a virtual.
So that's the thing. Okay.
Yep. You can show them your ID. They can watch you sign. They can give their electronic stamp of approval. Appraisals are right now, the majority of appraisals are drive-by or desktop or waived altogether if there's enough equity position. So appraisers don't even need to step into homes. I'd say 9 out of 10 times, depending upon the property type, the loan amount, and the loan type. So yeah, I think that we're definitely are seeing a bigger push to digital, not only because of they want to encourage business to continue during this current environment, but it quite frankly should, right? Like we don't need to do things the way we always have. And I think we're starting to understand that we can relax some of those standards. And it's going to force, like I said, it's going to force some counties, title companies or county recording offices to really step up their digital game. But I think it's necessary.
Yeah, I think I'll comment on this and what we were talking about just a moment ago. I mean, look, I think that it's great that we've found all these great tools and resources that allow us to operate from home and perhaps operate more efficiently, particularly during a time like this where it's necessary. But, on a personal note, I hope it doesn't continue this way because, I'd like to start living life in 3D again. And, I only want to live in 2D for so long. And I think that
I got glasses for that.
Yeah. I think that people have an innate desire to want to congregate, to want to be together. I think that's what makes New York, speaking to that point again, the buzz and electricity of that city. I think that's what makes LA what it is. So I do hope that, while we found a way to adapt during this time, that we find our way back to the way things were, because I think that's what makes us, that's what makes our society what it is and makes us, what we are as humans. But speaking to the process, look, I think there's always been a little bit of a concern that, we might go the way of the travel agents who went the way of the dinosaurs, and certainly trying to do everything we can to guard against that. In luxury markets, I think that there are still too many touch points that require real human involvement for it to ever become streamlined and digital the way it would be like going on to orbits and booking a flight rather than calling a travel agent as you would have, years ago. But the process itself is, of course, becoming more streamlined. More people are starting their home search online. I would go as far as to say everyone is starting their home search, at least in some capacity online. I do a lot of work.
Redfin, right? That's what Redfin and Zillow kind of come into play, right?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I do a lot of business with Zillow. I'm one of their exclusive partners here in Los Angeles. And I was talking to one of the senior VPs last week and asking him just, what's your perspective? What are you seeing? And it's pretty much what you would expect. Traffic is way up. Connections are way down. Right? So everyone's online looking, but few people are actually taking action to go out and see a property. And that's starting to pick up little by little, but everyone is starting that process online. And then there's a human connection to the actual agent who facilitates the transaction, which I always say to people, finding the right property is one very, very small part of my job. That's not where I make my commission. I make my commission in helping to navigate through the deal.
I think that's a great point and really great kind of segue to what we do is really you need to find the right partners. You need to find, like, if you're trying to buy a house, trying to get a mortgage, don't go at it alone. You got to find the right person. You got to find the right resource. Talk to us, talk to people like John or Ryan and really make sure you're making the right decisions and have a partner through it. So with that, I want to open it for some questions. I don't know how to do that, but
people could probably
participants can unmute themselves and ask questions.
Oh yeah, there you go. Anybody want?
Yeah, we can unmute ourselves. It looks like.
Yeah. See if anybody has any questions.
I got a question for you, Hatem. What are you advising your clients to do from a financial perspective right now? Obviously, it's different for each person, but are people investing back into the market right now if they have cash and they're seeing this as an opportunity to get in if they've been sitting on the sidelines for a while, or are they dollar cost averaging in? A lot of our clients are asking that, if they don't put 20% down, if they hold money back, what would they do with the difference, right? If they were going to put 50% down, now they didn't want to, what should they be doing with the money they're not putting down? And that would be information that would be helpful for us to have.
Just like I think with real estate, there's not a lot of deals right now per se. So we're telling people to stay patient. And I don't think we know what the next 3 to 6 months hold. So the reality is, if you're trying to get in today, dollar cost averaging is the only way you can do it. There's a tale of two kind of economies right now. You got the digital economy, which is doing super, super well. And that's where everyone is going, the Microsofts, the Googles, the companies that really would benefit from this world. And then the rest, like the airlines and the Carnival cruises and the retailers and so forth. So we're trying to really tell people to stay patient, own the right places. We are in recession. It's very early on. We don't know what's going to happen. So be patient. Really, that's what we tell our clients.
Got it.
So if we don't have any other questions, I really want to thank you, John, Ryan, everyone else. Thank you for tuning in. Again, reach out if you have any question. John is with the agency. Ryan is also with Fairway, is doing some great work. So we can put you in touch with them. But we're here for you. Stay safe, and hopefully we'll talk soon.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody. Bye, guys.
Bye.